Welcome to the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Bell, and I interview business leaders who are committed to their own growth and the development of everyone on their team. If you enjoy my podcast, be sure to subscribe and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. Welcome back to another episode of the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. Have you ever found yourself not speaking up, whether it's a one-on-one situation or in a group? For a variety of reasons, women often hold back instead of using their voice. Today's guest has learned to speak up in a powerful way, and she has important insights to share with you. Her name is Jennifer Wilkov, and I know you're going to find this conversation valuable. Jennifer, welcome to my show.
Thank you so much, Meredith. I really appreciate being here, and I'm very excited to speak up and talk with you today.
I can hardly wait. I want to extend a thank you to our mutual friend and colleague, Jeanette Sibley, who is the one who introduced us, because I've just loved getting to know you and the important work that you're doing. And I want to let my audience know more about who you are before we jump into our conversation. Jennifer is the founder and CEO of Speak Up Women, a community that is cultivating women's self-expression and empowerment. Jennifer speaks to women through her inspiring personal message, which is this: you have the right to remain fabulous, regardless of any situation, circumstance, or condition. She is passionate about elevating the self-esteem of women everywhere and encouraging their self-worth. She also supports first-time writers and seasoned authors with the essentials to become a bestseller. And Jennifer also has had amazing things outside of work. She's an elite hiker. She has summited Mount Kilimanjaro and completed the Grand Canyon Rim to Rim hike, which is 23.5 miles. She's also beaten advanced stage 4 lung cancer and has survived 7 near-death experiences. Today, she loves helping others become everything they can dream of and live the lives they imagine. Jennifer, I just touched a little bit on, who you are and what you're doing. And I would love for us to start by talking about early in your career, your experience as a certified financial planner, because I think that lays the groundwork for the work that you've been doing on Speak Up Women.
It has. Thank you, Meredith. And, for me, being a certified financial planner was a very meaningful job for me. I had had multiple careers before it, and it allowed me the personal interaction with someone about something essential in their lives, money, right? And how they were going to do that. And when I was given Advisor of the Year the year prior to the situation that occurred, and honored by my branch in a very large firm here in the U.S., what ended up happening was I was falsely accused of a white-collar crime. My compliance supervisor lied to the district attorney in Manhattan about me, and I was thrown under the bus by my defense attorney, and actually really thrown under the bus. We have a documentary that will be coming out later this year about that. But I actually was falsely accused and given a wrongful conviction for something that I hadn't done. And being accused of a conspiracy when I basically hadn't done anything was very disheartening, to the point where they even sent me to Rikers Island prison. Mm. And so when I got out of prison, I actually was brought up again at the at the FINRA, which is the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority here in the US that oversees all the advisory firms, all the investment advisors like me, and all the markets for the US, all the stock markets. Well, guess who was there? The compliance supervisor who couldn't answer questions about the NASD and all the other markets. And I was found 100% innocent by three of the adjudicators in that particular hearing, which were all people who were part of the legal system. And it was sort of like we were looking back saying, what happened? And for me, I didn't stay silent. In fact, I was asked to do a TED talk about it, which is called I Survived Prison, which you can go watch on YouTube or whatever, wherever you find it. Because for me, it was really important to tell people what happened to me. And for a lot of people, they would have gone and hidden under a rock. And for me, I literally had everything stripped away from me by an entity that basically was falsely accusing me of something. And it wasn't right. My grandfather was an attorney, very prominent one, in upstate New York. And I was like, this ain't happening. And all my friends came to me. I had nothing. And they said, we're going to build you a website. We're going to put up the truth. You write it, we're going to put it up. And I did. And they did. And that's what support is like when you speak up. It actually is people who said, I want you to do this. That was the TED event producer. I want you to do this. Will you come and talk about it? And I did. And that's the value of speaking up. And it does lay the foundation of that. And now I'll be speaking up in the documentary I mentioned. But, for a lot of women, especially, Meredith, speaking up is really challenging. And for me, I've been doing it since I was 3.
I've seen that. And, that's such a remarkable story. And you're so right. So many people may have been intimidated by what happened and withdraw instead of becoming an advocate like you did. And some of the other things that came out of that experience for you, you took that to really expand your own thinking, your own behavior, and it feeds into this organization that you've created, the Speak Up Women. And I would love for you to share what that is and also what it's not and why you're so passionate about it.
Speak Up Women is something that I really felt strongly about. I am the secretary of the board of an organization called It Could Happen to You, and I help other people when they face these same issues that I spoke about. But Speak Up Women is not about that. It is really about the relationship women have with themselves, with the people in their personal lives, family, friends, neighbors, and their community, in the workplace with their colleagues and their bosses. Yes, their bosses, and also vendors and clients and patients, depending on your profession. And it's also about speaking up for others in your life who can't do it for themselves. Now, that means people who may be in your home, you have special needs kids or elderly parents or anything in between. Or you may be speaking up and lending your voice to a nonprofit like I do to advocate for a particular cause because it means something to you. You have that voice. You are the person who can speak up. You can tell people how things are that you like, how things don't land well for you, what you want, what you need help with. All of those situations. I always say to people when I'm on a camera like this with you, we can't do this if we're not willing to speak up with each other. We're not willing to ask questions, to answer them, to say, I don't know. I don't know is one of those things women fear all the time. And when you say, I don't know, following it with, can you tell me more about that? Or, I'd like to learn more about that. There are always responses that you can give But Speak Up Women is really about that concept you had when you were a child, or maybe if you're a mommy now, and you say to your children, or it was said to you, use your words. Use your words. We always say that to get somebody else to speak up, right? And somewhere along the way, Meredith, somebody says, shush, I don't want to hear that. Or you should be seen and not heard, and so on. And it gets in there, it gets in your cells. And I'm that person who comes in and says, flush it out. It's time to speak up.
It's so true, that contrast between use your words and hush. I heard the hush more often in various ways, and with good intentions. That's the thing. The people who are saying that to children mean well. They're trying to, teach them certain respectful behaviors, I guess you could say, but the impact of that then is we internalize and learn, oh, I better not say anything. And then that takes a toll on us as we get older, into adulthood, into the workplace, into personal relationships. Like you said, every aspect of our lives, including ourselves, on my worthiness to speak up. And that's one of the things I'd love to explore with you. What have you found over the time that you've been doing this work with encouraging women to speak up? What holds them back from speaking up?
There are so many things that women get tripped up by, which is really a problem because for them, it may even be somebody's disposition physically, where they're afraid to say something. It may be somebody's title, where they don't feel like they should, or they feel like no one will listen to me. Oftentimes, when you're in a meeting, you may find somebody, for example, that actually is at the front of the room. And if you've ever noticed, at the next meeting that you go to, see how many people never say anything. And oftentimes, as someone who's been in a management role in other corporate positions prior to what I do now, it's always the quiet people that actually have a lot to say, but ironically don't. And it's the people who hold it back and the people who don't take an interest in why they're holding it back. Everybody loses. The person who's holding it back and the people who could benefit from what they actually know or have to say or could offer. And when you hold back, it's one of those things, people refer to it as imposter syndrome. Oh, no, there's something about me that's not enough to be respected, or what I have to say is going to be valued. Well, that all starts with you, honey. It's all about you. And I always say to people, don't be the person who says no to you. That's what holding back is it's you saying, oh, no, 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 don't say that, don't do that, don't whatever. Stop it.
That requires a certain level of self-awareness, doesn't it? To even notice I'm being silent and examine why. And so I'm curious, how do you help women get past those self-doubts, those inner messages that they are saying to themselves that keeps them quiet? How do you help them emerge from that to speak up more?
It's one of those things. Oftentimes people mistake Speak Up Women as a group of speakers. It's not. All of us are speakers. We all speak in our personal lives, right? But part of what happens is something called stage fright, right? And most people know that when they associate it with an actor or with somebody who's going to speak at a podium, a pastor, a rabbi, or, so on, right? However, when you're even one-on-one with somebody, you might have that same level of fear, right?
Mhm.
And that fear is something that oftentimes it's a physical reaction that you're actually having, which we can talk about the science later. But really, what you want to do is you want to find different ways to allow yourself to use your voice. Your voice is such a gift that you've been given. And all that knowledge, wisdom, and opportunity you have to contribute or ask questions and learn, it's all sitting right here in the middle of your neck in this cute little box, right? It's a gift box. It's called a voice box. And it actually is there for a reason. And the fear is really about, we say letting the cat out of the bag. Well, let the voice out of the box. Let it speak. Let it speak. Don't be the thing. It's very easy to say, don't be afraid, right? But that doesn't really help somebody who has that fear. Most of the time, it comes from a confidence question they have or a doubt that they have. Either they're not enough or they are afraid somebody is not going to like what they've said. The people-pleasing gene, right? That's for another time. But the piece about speaking is really important. This little fear guy, it's kind of like you have fear on one shoulder and you have all those other things that it could be on the other. When you allow fear to overtake things, it keeps you from the very things you said you wanted. And that's really why it's a gift box in your voice box, just waiting to give you them all.
No, I love that phrase. I have not heard that gift box, using your voice box. I've always talked about feedback, from others being a gift. And so I think if we reframe our thinking about our voice and that we have this gift and we can use it more often, and being aware of the fear and recognizing what kind of fear am I having right now that's holding me back from speaking up. I think that's such an important point for all of us to consider, men and women, when we
Yes.
don't speak up in a one-on-one or in a group for fear of something, just examining what is that fear so that we can move past it and use our voice. Because a lot of times in the moment, do you find people are, like the worst case scenario, I'll get fired or I'll be demoted or, some catastrophic thought that runs through our mind that we accept in the moment. And that prevents us from speaking up.
It's interesting, all those, Meredith, that you mentioned, but one of the things I often find is people who fear that their voice is going to shake and their fear is going to show. And that is something that for them, it's safer to be quiet than to actually fumble, not say it well. The words I'm choosing aren't the right ones. I'm not sure if it's clear. Ask somebody. If you're not sure if it's clear, just ask them, do you want me to say it a different way? Like, this is something that is so essential for people who want to communicate. And Speak Up Women is more than about communication. It's really about women being able to freely talk the way I'm talking to you, to anybody about anything without anything between us. And it's one of those things where the minute that you feel there's something between you and the person, a white coat on a doctor, why can't you question them? Why can't you ask them questions? I got news for you, honey. You can. You can do it all. You just need to be within yourself and understand, like you said, Meredith, I agree, that self-awareness of who you are right now is so essential for your well-being. It gives you the opportunity to take all that breath, bring it through that voice box, right? And give that gift to somebody else. feedback, something you mentioned, it's a great thing. Hey, I love that. Hey, you know what? It would be so much better if the way you said that same sentiment to me sounded like this instead of, oh, I hate it when you do that. Well, when you say it that way, the person says, well, inside their little person says, well, I don't know how else to say it. So, okay, I understand. So now I'm not going to say anything to her, and then she feels a certain way, and it just snowballs. And it's really the result, honestly, of not speaking up and saying to somebody, hey, let me help you. This didn't feel good for me, and let me help you a little bit down the lane. This would really make me feel good if you said it like this, or if you could offer this, or whatever, right? And if somebody is basically sitting in front of you and expecting you to know something and you don't, quivering in your seat is not going to help you. Asking or letting somebody know, I don't know enough about that, and I would really like to know more. Okay, I can connect you with so and so, and he can blah, blah, blah. Instead of just sitting there and saying, I don't know that. Well, it doesn't really tell somebody that you're interested in knowing it either.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that follow-up. And you mentioned that earlier, that fear of saying, I don't know, because of how we'll look or be perceived, but combining it with that curiosity that lets the other person know, all right, well, I can help this person learn more, like you say, by referring to this or that. And when you were talking about not speaking up because of a fear of your voice quivering, I
Yes.
got to thinking about how one of the reasons for that could be that we have sat silent in the face of this person or this situation for so long, and we've repressed these feelings that it's bubbling up. And if we speak, we're afraid it's going to, explode or come out in a way that isn't going to serve us well. And so that quivering could happen for that reason. So again, it's that noticing what's going on within me and what price am I paying if I don't speak up.
It's a high price. And, one of the things that can happen, it happened to me in the workplace, is you might speak up and you may not even realize you hit a nerve with somebody. And it's a very awkward situation. And I've lived through it, and I wasn't fired either. I actually had a boss in a corporate company who, after being out with the field sales representatives, I came back and reported that they weren't actually using the materials I was providing in the role and job I had under this person who was the department head. And I didn't notice the vein that was popping out on his forehead as I was speaking. And he dismissed me and marched right down the hall to the national vice president of sales and the executive vice president and down to HR to fire me. To which the national vice president of sales and the EVP walked down and said, you can't do that to her. All unbeknownst to me, which I obviously found out later when they moved me 2 weeks later to a new department. I went to work for 2 weeks with no job, but I sat in my office because they were all arm wrestling about what they were going to do with me, but they certainly didn't want me to leave. So you never know. And, part of the most important thing about speaking up is I've been in conversations with women. I was in a conversation recently, which I think is really poignant. There was a woman, she was in an engineering company. She was the first woman hired in their 75-year history. And she actually was being sexually harassed by somebody. And she spoke up, and Meredith, she told me she was fired because she spoke up about it. And ironically, and she was almost in tears when she met me, and she said, "I'm so happy that you're doing this. And this is what happened to me." And 6 months later, she's in a different job. She's so much happier. She doesn't have any of that stuff going on. And for her, she's learning, she's growing, she's actually expanding her life. And for a lot of people, they also think of Speak Up Women as Me Too. No, it's not Me Too. Me Too is something that we've all understood. And speaking up is a part of that. I mean, we gave one of our Make a Difference awards to New York State for the Adult Survivors Act that was passed unanimously, bipartisan, and signed by the governor. I mean, there are so many reasons to use your voice. It's not one. It's really about communicating clearly. And when you have actually taken the time to articulate the life you want to have, ask for it. Don't lay down and wait for it. It's
Mhm.
not coming. You have to talk
Mhm.
about it. You have to talk to people. You have to ask. You have to say no to things. You have to tell people, "I don't know. I want to know more about that." You have to tell people, "Hey, that looks so cool. How can I do that? I want to know how to do that," right? It doesn't matter if it's cooking something or whatever. The speaking up is really the heart of it. And most people don't realize that. All the networking groups, they're all fabulous. But if you can't speak up, it's not going to happen.
You know, those two stories you just told, your own and then this other woman's, just really hit home and made me think about the fact that when we do have the courage to use our voice, we can have unexpected consequences as a result of that. You know, it's a shame we can't say in today's time, because that was a recent occurrence, right? That she got fired.
Yes,
I mean, it's not like that was 10 or 20 years ago. That was this, what, within the last 12 months.
correct.
So these kinds of things are going on. And at the moment that we really need to speak up and can be tempted to be quiet, we can't be guaranteed that people are going to agree with what we say, and in some cases have extreme reactions like firing her, and yet trusting that if I use my voice, it's going to make a difference for
Yep.
me at least. And so even though she got fired, it turned out that maybe because she got fired, it turned out to be a good thing for her because it gave her the opportunity to go somewhere that she could not experience that kind of harassment and go to work each day, I would imagine, with joy instead of anxious anticipation of what am I going to face today. And I think that that's an important thing for us to consider as we look at using our voices. People aren't going to always be applauding us for speaking up, right? We're doing it
No,
for ourselves and taking care of ourselves.
that's right. One of the things that is so important about using your voice is about understanding what's okay for you and what's not. And that personal in little person inside I talked about, they want to trust you on the outside. And when you can use your voice and speak freely, it gives you an opportunity to really tell that little person inside, "I got you. I got you." And it's all about being able to not just speak out all the time. That's really one of those things that people are like, "Oh, well, these people talk so much and blah, blah, blah." It's not about whether they talk. It's not about whether you speak up. It's about speaking up for the things that mean something to you. And that's really important. It's a difference. Listening is part of speaking up. It's
Mhm.
also listening to other people, the whole thing about two ears and one mouth, right? That's really important. But the other side of it is really understanding, say something and listen to how it lands for somebody else. And maybe you can't read how they're receiving it. Maybe you'll face something like I did, where somebody just dismisses you and all of a sudden there are repercussions. Stand your ground. This is your life. Life is not a dress rehearsal. This is it. Every day you wake up, that's what you get. And if you stand up for yourself and speak up, you'll be able to get all the wonderful things that you wanted, whether it's a scholarship or whether it's a position in a company or whether it's showing your children what it's like to speak up and that it's okay to do that, and doing it for things that really mean something. And that goes, Meredith, for what you're saying. Got to speak up to yourself. You've got to be
No,
able to correct that self-talk.
yes. Yes. And yes, I love that. We'll repeat that theme. There's another aspect of this, though, and that is speaking up for others who may not have a voice. And I would love for you to talk a little bit about that because I think that's such an important part of your work. It's not just speaking up for yourself.
It is, it's when you see, there's that catchphrase, when you see something, say something. If you notice, there's a speaking component to that, right? Say something, right? And I know people who are extraordinarily passionate, like I am, about certain things, meaning things that are causes they care about. A cause could be an individual you care about. It could be someone who becomes incapacitated suddenly and they need an advocate desperately, especially in the healthcare environment. We also have people who have something that happens to them in some way, shape, or form, in any of the forms, and they don't know what to do. And they may actually be afraid to speak up for multiple reasons. And having that other person speak up for them or with them is really important. And being that person is that person who feels that passion for whatever the situation or circumstance is. That's why you have the right to remain fabulous, no matter what that is, because your voice matters. It's important. And when you lend it to somebody else, I do it, for authors all the time in my other business. I have literally spoken up for people that have gotten the short stick. Why? Because it's important. It's important. And for you, not only are you important, the causes you care about are too. And letting people know, whether it's an individual or it's an organization or it's a particular effort, do it. Lend your voice. It's okay. It's a good thing. If you look at history, it's how a lot of things got done. There was a lot of speaking up going on in this country, in the US especially, but not only, where people have spoken up for what they wanted for years. And it's because those voices became so loud and such an integrated message of one voice. It's why things change. It's how things change. And it's how people understand, hey, maybe I should look at this. Hey, maybe this is more important than I thought it was. And you don't have to be a celebrity on television talking about a cause. It's okay for you to just be in your local neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's using that voice and lending your gift to somebody else.
I was thinking in the workplace too, the opportunities we have to speak up on behalf of someone else. If we've noticed someone, attacking or being inappropriate in how they're addressing another person, to not just sit silently disagreeing with what happened, but to actually take a stand on behalf of someone else. The power of that just can change the whole dynamic of the interaction. from, one person jumping on someone else and having an advocate or a supporter who's willing to say, that's not okay.
That's right. And oftentimes, the bully at work is the person who targets the person who has the least number of people around them. Why? Why? Because there's not enough voices for that person to help them when they can't find their own. And that's something that really matters. It gives us a lot of energy when we actually have other people who are saying, that's not appropriate. That's not a good thing that you're doing over there. And I often in the corporate space was always asking, how does that serve people here? How does that serve the employee?
Great
How does that
question.
serve the customer? How does that serve, how does it serve? Your voice is
Mhm.
such a wonderful thing, can do so many things. Why would you want to use it that way? And how is it actually making things better, making the world a better place, to be very cliche?
Yeah.
It's the way you do things. You got somebody sitting in a meeting, they say something, and 5 minutes later, somebody else who maybe, it's a woman who said it first and a man who says it 5 minutes later, talk to the woman. Talk to the woman who had the idea. Let the conversation include the man who added to it, as opposed to skipping over what was said and not acknowledging that there's a conversation that includes more than just one person. Oh, that's a great idea. Oh, and the other person is sitting there, the woman, saying, I just said that. And that's very, very important as the leader. Your show is about growing strong leaders, Meredith.
Yeah.
If you can't acknowledge the people who have the courage to be able to add and make a difference in your organization, what are you sending as a message? That they're not valuable, that their contribution isn't wanted, and you want them to work how many hours a day to make your company better? That's really a really mixed message. It's
Mhm.
very complicated for the person that comes in and doesn't feel good in the environment. And it's something that you as a leader can show people from the top down. I don't care if you're a middle manager. I was a middle manager. I did so many things. I would take up all the time on your show, helping other people speak up to other people, including HR in the company, because I cared. I cared about their experience, not just what they did, but having them come to work with a smile on their face and say, oh, I'll be happy to stay an hour after to help you with that because I know it's something that's really needed in the morning. Yeah. Not, oh my God, I'm gonna have to call home. Blah, blah, blah. I
Mhm.
mean, it's really the essence of leadership to give people the right words to keep them going. And we want so many things to happen in our businesses and in our lives. And if we can't use our voices to lead, listen, and give people the encouragement they need, including ourselves, it's so important because that's how we get from here to where we want to be.
Yeah.
Not taking a seminar, not taking a class, but actually using our voices.
That's such an important point for leaders. And one of the words that is coming to my mind is a really effective leader is a master noticer. And so, in a meeting, which you've been talking about, if somebody hasn't had a chance to speak up yet or has chosen not to ask for their opinion, ask for their input to make sure others get heard, and also paying attention to when one person suggests something another person jumps on it and presents it as their idea. And instead of focusing on that second person, acknowledging the first. In other words, being a really good noticer of the process and, the dynamics going on within the group, because that to me, everybody is watching. What is the leader doing? What are they saying? And if there's inequity in the way, one person is spoken to versus another, that's going to impact the whole dynamics of the team.
It does. One of the things I'll tell you this great 20-second clip about another experience at that same corporation, believe it or not, that I stayed at in the other department. I actually created a system that we would call big data as a prototype. I actually visited all the different departments all over the country for that corporation and company, and actually put together this prototype. And the day that I was told I was going to present it to the CEO of the company. And the day I was going to present it, the person that they had put in a position above me, between me and the national senior vice president of the same company, came in, a man, to me and said, "You stay here and I'll let you know how the meeting goes." And I took one look at him and I said, "Really?" And I just brushed right past him, walked right down the hall to the national senior vice president's office. And I said, "Really? You want him to present this? He doesn't know anything about it." And he said, "Who told you that? How about that?" He
The
asked
VP
me,
didn't
"Who
even know.
told you that?" And this gentleman had followed me. He couldn't keep up with me, to the office. And he looked at him and he looked at me and he looked at him again. And he said, "You can come to the meeting and you will sit next to me and you won't say anything. And she's going to present it." And that was very powerful for me, because I literally had spent months learning about this and putting it together. And I wasn't even in IT. I actually had brought in and made all the choices about, who should be in the prototype and everything else. And that system, what that did was it revolutionized the way that company actually did business with retailers, so that it would reduce returns for the company and elevate the profitability for not only the company, but the retailers that we worked with. And that's what I had created. Something really, really astounding that knocked the socks off everybody in the meeting. And I was the person who knew about it. So can you imagine if I had said, "Okay, I'll stay in my office"?
You know, I
No
just love
way.
that. No, I love that story, Jennifer, because for so many reasons. For one thing, I like the fact right now you're claiming the impact of what you did. I think too often we tend to minimize, oh, it was nothing, or, somebody else could have done that. I love the fact that you are standing in ownership of that revolutionary idea that you presented. And I think that that is such a key aspect for all of us to keep in mind, to say, yes, I did that, and not feel like we have to be, I'll call it false humility, having
Mhm.
this, oh, I'm not going to, toot my horn too much. But when we've done something like you did, and also not backing down and going right to the person who would be able to support you in pursuing what it is you wanted to do, there are so many lessons to extract from that I think speak to what we've been talking about, this whole idea of using your voice to have an impact. And it wasn't just you stroking your ego to get up there, but you knew it all. You had all this information, so you knew you were the best person to present it. And so there was no doubt in your mind about how this should be handled. And I think that it circles back to this idea, when we allow this doubt, this fear, and we can replace it due to our own actions and experiences with that confidence to know, by golly, I'm doing this. This is mine. And take real ownership of it. I think that's huge. So thank you for sharing that. I want to ask you um, about developing future leaders because you've done something quite remarkable with using interns in your work and what impact that has had over time. I want to stimulate the thinking of my listeners by having you share what you've done because I think there are ways they could adapt this into their own work. So please talk about that.
It's my privilege to talk about it. I am part of a grant program that, as an employer, that actually allows me to work with New York City high school students as interns for a 6-week cohort or for the summer. And I've been doing it for a while, and it has been a thrill. And I have worked with, I ask for girls because they usually get less mentorship than boys, which it's a research that I'm quoting, not my own opinion. So I want to actually pull the girls forward to give them the opportunity. And I have had boy interns also. And so in my business, Your Book is Your Hook, which is a business for authors that you mentioned, and writers, I bring them in and they work on marketing and media. And I have them read Daring Greatly by a great author, Brene Brown, which has changed their lives at 16 years old. Something that many people don't get till they're adults in a company that decides to implement that particular paradigm. But as an intern, they come in, they don't know anything. Oftentimes, it's their first experience working at a company. And it's very interesting to be able to interact with 16-year-olds and having them work on projects so that they not only learn, but depending on where they are, being an employer who can meet them where they're at and help them grow from there during the time that I have with them is incredibly important. I have interns that were interns for me that have come back and said, Miss Wilkov, may I intern for you this summer? And part of what I do, they're now not seniors in high school, is I teach them to negotiate. Well, what does the internship look like to you? How much time is it? Is it paid? Is it not paid? What do you want to do? What is it you want to learn? In fact, one of my interns who I had, who is now a sophomore in college, came to me last summer at the end of her freshman year and asked me that question. And I asked her to negotiate. And I teach my interns to invoice me. And it's really a very big piece of what they never get in a college setting. And she helps me with LinkedIn because that's her information she's interested in. But more so, Meredith, she changed her whole idea of going to college to marketing after my internship. And she decided that she wanted to go into social media management because of the work she did in my business during the previous fall. And it changed her life. And for me, as a leader, as someone who is a business owner, not only the CEO, but also the owner, I'm grooming the next generation. I'm helping them ask questions without being embarrassed or fearful. I tell them all the time from day one, you have to ask. I don't know what you know, and I don't know what you don't. More than likely, they don't.
Mhm.
And being able to be patient and kind and being able to understand, hey, they may not do it right the first time. I don't give them time sensitive things because they're learning. And if I gave them time sensitive things, then I would be more demanding than their knowledge would allow them to perform.
Mhm.
And who wins when you do that? Nobody, right? It's really understanding who are the people you're working with, whether they're an intern or an employee. And for them, I tell them, seek out the employers or the other internships you might have while you're in college. Ask questions about the internship. It's okay. An interview is a two-way interview. You're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. There are so many components in an internship, and you may say, well, 6 weeks isn't enough. Oh, bollocks. It totally is. You can do so much in 6 weeks with somebody who is 16, who's hungry, interested, wants to be able to contribute, wants the experience. And I write lots of referral letters for people who have worked for me when they apply to college and other things because they do such a great job. And it's not because they did everything perfectly. It's because they were interested.
And
And
I
when you
would,
have that interest, boom.
yes. And you know, I have to say, I have to think that some of their interest comes from the interest you take in them and the stage you set for them for success. And I think that's so valuable, whether you're working with an intern or not, or a new employee. This whole idea of that open, honest communication and being clear about what you want and need from them, and then having these conversations, I can see why they come back to you and want to continue working with you. Jennifer, we could keep talking. I know that there's so much more we can explore, but we are at time. So what I'd love to ask you to do is share, how can people connect with you and learn more about the work that you're doing?
Well, the simple way to connect with me is go to my name, jenniferswilkov.com, and that's with a K and a V, not a C and a B. And you can also, if you are a writer, I'd love to meet you. My website is yourbookisyourhook.com. You can find out everything I do for writers and authors, even if you've already published. And for Speak Up Women, which we've been focusing on in this interview, speakupwomen.com is a hub. It's a community. It's a place where you can come every month and virtually network, find and connect with other like-minded women that understand that speaking up is where it's at. And I welcome you, speakupwomen.com. And Meredith, thank you so very much for this fabulous conversation today. I've so enjoyed it. And I wish you great joy as you continue to grow stronger leaders.
You, Jennifer, and I want to acknowledge you and the work you're doing and who you are and who you show up as in the world. You know, someone with such a great voice for people and an advocate for others using their voice. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. It's been just a real delight for me, and I'm sure for every listener who has tuned into this conversation. It was great. Thank you again for being with me today. Thanks for tuning in to my podcast. Now head over to growstrongleaders.com and check out the powerful tools we've created to help leaders strengthen their character and communication skills. Until next time, I'm Meredith Bell.